Hi, I'm Sloane. At my own promotion party, the one with my name on the invitations, my sister slipped something in my drink. I saw her. I switched glasses. 30 minutes later, my mother collapsed. Everyone panicked. Everyone but me. Because deep down, I knew. The drink wasn't meant for her. But that wasn't even the worst part. They erased my name from the slideshow, replaced my face in photos, transferred my house into a trust I never agreed to. And somehow, I was still expected to stay silent. How do you fight a family that smiles while they steal from you? Would you stay quiet too? There are moments in life when everything you've tried to ignore snaps into focus. That night, my promotion party, was one of them. The ballroom shimmered with soft golds and silvers, lit by chandeliers older than my career. From the tall windows, I could see the Chicago skyline glowing against the late spring sky, like it had been painted just for me. A string quartet played something light in the corner, and laughter, polite, polished laughter, echoed off the walls. My name was on the banner, Sloane Turner, newly promoted Vice President of Regional Strategy. It should have been my moment, everyone said so, but the second I walked in, I knew it wasn't. I stood by the champagne table longer than I should have, pretending to read the label on a bottle I'd picked up 3 times already. I wasn't avoiding people. I was avoiding the tone in their voices when they said, "You must be so proud of yourself," like it was a miracle I'd made it this far. I turned when I heard them enter. My mother, Vera, was in a deep emerald jacket she only pulled out for fundraisers or funerals. Her smile was tight. Right beside her, of course, was Sable, my older sister, all elegance and confidence, like she'd just stepped off a commercial shoot for Political Wives. Dad, Leland, trailed behind, nodding like he'd been dragged to another award show he didn't ask for. Sable's hug was textbook, arms just tight enough, her head tilted at the exact angle for a camera. "So proud of you," she said softly, squeezing my shoulder. I mean, who would have thought? She meant it as a compliment, I think. That's what made it worse. Dinner passed in a blur. People came and went. My colleagues beamed. The CEO gave a short speech and called me up to the front. I smiled through it, made my 2-minute thank you, and tried not to choke on the knot building in my chest. It wasn't until dessert that I saw it happen. I'd stepped away to take a call, a text from my assistant asking where to send a last-minute document. When I turned back toward the table, I caught sight of Sable near the drinks again. She wasn't talking to anyone. Her purse sat open on the bar, one hand inside. She pulled something small out, a vial, a dropper. I couldn't see exactly. But I saw the motion. She looked around, quickly, casually. Then she poured whatever it was into a single glass of champagne. That glass had a chip on the rim. Small, hardly noticeable to anyone else. But I always noticed. It was the one I used at every family event because I knew no one else would grab it. Something about it felt mine. She picked it up, turned, and walked toward me. "Sloane, you look tired," she said gently, offering the glass. "Here, you should sit and enjoy yourself. Have a toast." My stomach twisted. My fingers reached for the glass automatically. I smiled. "Thanks," I said, like nothing was wrong. And maybe nothing was. Maybe I was overthinking. But I'd seen her expression. Calculated. Focused. Her eyes didn't look at me like a sister's. They looked at me like I was a box to be checked off. I didn't drink it. Instead, I excused myself. "Just going to run to the restroom real quick," and set the glass down on a side table near the corner of the room. Vera had wandered there moments earlier, chatting with a neighbor she only remembered at parties. She reached for the glass without a second thought. I froze. I should have stopped her, should have said something. But I stood there, still and silent, heart pounding behind my ribs like it wanted out. I told myself she wouldn't drink at all, that maybe nothing would happen, that I hadn't seen what I thought I saw. 30 minutes later, just as the quartet was beginning a soft version of Clair de Lune, I heard a noise, small, then sharp. Vera staggered. Her hand clutched her chest, and she let out a sound that didn't belong in a room like this, like the air had suddenly turned against her. She collapsed, glasses clinked to the floor. A woman screamed, chairs scraped backwards. Someone yelled, "Call 911!" Sable ran to Vera's side, crying out, "Oh my God, Mom!" She dropped to her knees, grabbing Vera's hand. Her sobs echoed across the ballroom, loud and dramatic. I didn't move at first. It wasn't fear that kept me still. It was recognition. In that moment, I saw everything clearly. Years of knowing wasn't quite right, of watching Sable charm her way through every misstep, every cruel whisper hidden in a smile, of hearing our parents say, "She just has a strong personality," whenever she steamrolled someone. I saw it all, and for the first time, I didn't look away. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't even angry, not yet. But I knew something I hadn't admitted until that moment. She hadn't meant for Mom to drink it. That drink was for me. And that was the moment I knew. I had seen her true face before anyone else did. He looked at me confused, then said, "Your sister," said it was all approved by the family. I don't know why I expected any other answer. Maybe part of me still wanted to believe it was a mistake, that Sable had simply grabbed the wrong USB, or maybe she had misunderstood the intention behind the event. But standing there in that overly air-conditioned ballroom, watching guests chatter around centerpieces of white lilies and gold-rimmed name cards, I realized there was no misunderstanding, there was just strategy. Vera had just been loaded into the ambulance minutes earlier. She was stable, they said, disoriented but awake, something about low blood pressure, dehydration. They weren't sure yet. Sable, of course, had insisted on riding with her. I had tried. "I'll go with you," I offered, grabbing my purse, already halfway to the door. But my father placed a hand on my arm, not gently. "No need, Sloan," he said. "Sable's got it handled. Stay here. Be with your guests." Be with my guests. The guests I didn't know half as well as Sable did. The ones she had personally invited, arranged seating for, and had probably already texted a summary of the ambulance incident. I stood frozen for a beat too long, then nodded. "Of course," I said. The flash drive comment from the AV tech had settled something inside me, like when a puzzle piece clicks and you finally see the picture forming. But it wasn't relief I felt, it was something harder to name. A mixture of humiliation, betrayal, and a quiet, searing kind of fury that didn't scream or cry, it just waited. Instead of going back to the main table, I wandered to the corner near the bar, hoping no one would follow. I needed 5 minutes without another person telling me how brilliant Sable's speech was, or how touching the slideshow had been. The problem wasn't that the slideshow had been bad, it was that it had nothing to do with me. The first images had shown family vacations from decades ago. Sable smiling with a fishing rod, Sable giving a toast at Leland and Vera's 30th anniversary, Sable and Vera at a charity event. There wasn't a single photo of me from college, none from my early days in the company, or the sleepless nights building my regional team from scratch. My promotion photo, missing. My career timeline, non-existent. Instead, it was a tribute to a legacy I hadn't been invited to be part of. That's the thing about families like mine. We don't scream. We don't throw plates or cut people off in dramatic fashion. We minimize. We smooth over. We edit out. I leaned on the edge of the bar, trying to remember the last time a family event had actually been about me. My high school graduation, Sable gave the speech. My first job offer, Dad congratulated me, then followed it up with, "Sable got a better one at your age." Even my name had become an afterthought in most family stories. And of course, Sloan was there too. I remembered when I was 8, sitting at the kids' table during Thanksgiving, and Vera told a neighbor, "Sable is our star. Sloan's our steady one." Steady, like wallpaper. "Look who just walked in," someone whispered near the door. I turned my head out of habit and nearly lost the air in my chest. Arlo. He walked in like he'd never ghosted me a month before our engagement party, like we hadn't spent 3 years building something I thought was real, like he hadn't disappeared after I found a text on his phone from a woman labeled therapist that read, "Last night was amazing. Wish I didn't have to sneak out." And yet, there he was, at my party. He looked good, of course. They always do when you're not ready to see them. Casual suit, open collar, the same crooked smile that once made me forget why I was mad. "Sloan," he said, like we were old friends catching up at Whole Foods. I blinked. What are you doing here? He had the nerve to look sheepish. Sable invited me. She said it might be nice to reconnect. Said you'd want that. Of course she did. I didn't think you'd actually show up, I said flatly. Well, she made it sound like you'd be okay with it. That things were in the past. I didn't answer. Because what do you say when someone crashes your most important night, knowing full well they were never welcome? He fidgeted. You look good, by the way. Thanks, I said, then turned away before I did something regrettable, like ask him if his new therapist made house calls. The rest of the evening felt like moving through wet cement. Every conversation was heavy, every smile forced. I saw Leland talking to a colleague of mine, gesturing toward the slideshow. We've always believed in strong family leadership, he said. Sable set the bar high. Not, we're proud of Sloane. Not, this is her night. Just, Sable set the bar. Near the end of the evening, I overheard two guests chatting near the dessert table. Did you see that slideshow? That whole family is impressive. Yeah, I thought it was a promotion party, but it felt more like a tribute to the older sister. I approached the AV guy again, the one running the projector. Hey, I said, trying to keep my tone casual. I noticed the presentation was a little different than expected. Who brought you the flash drive? He looked up from his laptop. Your sister said it was all approved by the family. There it was. The confirmation I hadn't wanted but somehow needed. I stood there for a long moment, nodding slowly. My mind was racing, but my voice was calm. Thanks, I said. It was almost midnight by the time I left. I didn't say goodbye. No one seemed to notice. At home, I kicked off my shoes, peeled off the tight dress, and poured myself a glass of water. I stared at the framed photo on my bookshelf, one of the few with me and both my parents, taken when I was 10. Back when I still thought we were all on the same team. My phone buzzed. A message from Sable. Hope you had a great night. Sorry about Mom. I'll keep you updated. So many compliments on the slideshow. You're welcome. I didn't respond, because that was the moment I understood something I'd been denying for a long time. This wasn't just about being overlooked. It was about being erased. The guy blinked twice, clearly waiting for some kind of reaction from me. I didn't give him one. I thanked him, turned, and walked away before my face could say more than my mouth was willing to. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because of the whine or the noise still buzzing in my head, but because of the quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when you've run out of rationalizations. It was the kind of silence that makes you ask yourself how long you've let people talk over you, rewrite you, shrink you into the version that best fit their comfort zone. By morning, I was sitting cross-legged on the floor of my condo, a lukewarm coffee in hand, scrolling through photos people had posted from the party. Some tagged me, most didn't. And in the captions, I wasn't the highlight, I wasn't even the backdrop. One read, "So proud of the Turner family legacy," with a photo of Sable standing beside the slideshow screen, smiling like she just won a Lifetime Achievement Award. Another said, "Beautiful night celebrating strength and sisterhood," with a shot of her giving that speech, the speech I never got to give. Then I saw it, my name. On a repost of the invitation. Sloane Turner, marketing assistant. Marketing assistant? I squinted. Checked again. No, it wasn't a joke. My chest felt tight, but not in that dramatic movie way. It was just pressure. The kind that makes you need to stand up, walk to the kitchen, rinse your mug out, and stare at nothing for a few minutes. I picked up my phone and called my dad. He answered on the second ring. "Sloane," he said, voice unreadable. "I figured you'd call." "Did you see the invitations?" I asked. "They have my title wrong. Marketing assistant? That's not even close." A short pause. "It was probably a mistake," he said, calm, too calm. "These things happen. Don't make it more than it is." I leaned against the counter, feeling the laminate edge dig into my hip. "It's not a typo. This went through 3 rounds of revision before print." "Who approved it?" He sighed. "Sable handled most of the logistics. She's better at that sort of thing. You've always been more, well, you focus on the work itself." It was meant to soothe. It landed like a slap. "I'm the one who got promoted, Dad." I know, Sloan, and we're all proud. But you can't turn every small detail into an attack. Is it small? I asked, voice low. My name, my title, my accomplishments, getting edited out of my own event? Another pause. You always read too much into things, he said finally. You know how Sable is. She understands how to work a room. These events, they're her thing. My fingers clenched around the phone. I wanted to scream, that was the problem all along. But I didn't. Because what would be the point? I ended the call politely. As always. Then I sat back down, opened my laptop, and pulled up the email receipt from the print shop. The one that confirmed the order had been placed by Ms. Sable Turner. Still, I gave them a call, just to be sure. Hi, this is Sloan Turner. I just had a quick question about an order placed for an event invitation under our family name. The woman on the other end was kind, efficient. Yes, I remember that one, she said. Large run, fancy gold embossed paper, right? That's the one. I explained the issue, asked if there was any chance a clerical error had occurred. We printed what was submitted, she said. I double-checked myself after your sister approved the final proof. Of course she did. I hung up, walked to the small storage cabinet in the hallway, and pulled out a box I hadn't opened in over a year. It was labeled Personal, written in my own handwriting from back when I thought that word still meant something safe. Inside were all the documents I had fought to build. My first business license, performance reviews, copies of bonuses, promotions, deeds, proof that I existed beyond the role of the steady one, proof that I had earned something on my own. Near the bottom, I found a USB drive, black, unlabeled, except for a piece of masking tape with my handwriting. Family Trust, Boston Property, Boston. I sat with it in my palm for a long minute. That apartment had been mine since I was 28, bought with my own savings, inherited equity, and months of double shifts. I let Sable handle the legal process when I moved back to Chicago. She insisted it would be easier for tax purposes, said she'd simplify the paperwork and put it into the family trust temporarily. I'd never followed up. That was years ago. I booted up the drive. The folder opened to a scanned copy of a document I didn't recognize. It looked official, and not in a good way. Sable's name was listed under primary trust holder. Mine wasn't listed at all. The apartment wasn't mine. Hadn't been for a long time. I closed the file and sat back. No tears, no outbursts, just a strange, detached clarity. It wasn't just a party. It wasn't just an invitation. It wasn't even about the champagne or the speech. This was systemic. They'd been carving me out piece by piece and smiling while they did it. That night, I didn't sleep again. But this time, it wasn't because I felt helpless. It was because something in me had shifted. Not broken, not bent. Shifted. She wasn't just after your reputation. She's been after your name, your assets, everything. Dahlia's words from the night before echoed in my mind as I walked into the restaurant 2 days after the party. Vera had sent a mass text that read, "Dinner to thank everyone for supporting Sloan. Casual, nothing formal, just family." Family. The hostess led me toward a long table set near the back of the restaurant. I spotted Sable, already seated at the head, her arms gracefully folded, chatting with 2 of my uncles like she was running for office. Leland sat beside her, scrolling through his phone. Vera stood to greet me, air-kissing my cheek as if we hadn't just sat through the most orchestrated ambush I'd ever witnessed. "You made it," she said. "I got your message. You look tired, honey. Have you been resting?" I smiled, the kind that never reaches the eyes. Resting's hard when you're auditing your entire life. She didn't respond, but her smile tightened slightly as she gestured to my seat, near the end of the table, far from the head. Of course. Even now, I was placed where I wouldn't be in frame if someone took a group photo. Halfway through appetizers, I received a text under the table. It was from Dahlia. "You sure you trust the trust?" "Because I don't." I glanced up, watching Sable laughing at something Leland said. It was all too smooth, too choreographed. Dinner itself was polite, too polite. No one brought up the party. No one asked how I felt about Mom collapsing mid-toast. And no one, absolutely no one, mentioned the slideshow. After the plates were cleared, just as the server began pouring coffee, Sable tapped her glass with a spoon. The sound drew everyone's attention. She stood with her wine glass in hand, all eyes on her, as if she'd just been called to deliver a eulogy. "I just wanted to say," she began, smiling that TV news anchor smile, "how grateful I am for this family, for how we show up for each other, even in tough times." She looked directly at me. "And especially for Sloan. You've always inspired me with how you keep pushing forward, even when things aren't perfect. You've shown us all what perseverance looks like." There was a pause, just long enough for polite applause. A few relatives clapped awkwardly. I didn't. Because that speech, that was the one I wrote, the one I had planned to give at my own promotion party. Word for word, almost. Changed just enough to make it sound like her tribute to me instead of my truth about myself. When the table began to settle again, I took a long sip of my water and counted backward from 10. After dessert, while people stood up to mingle and the conversation turned toward vacations and grandchildren, Sable slid into the empty seat beside me. Her perfume hit first, something expensive, probably French, and as polished as her delivery. "I wanted to talk to you privately for a second," she said, lowering her voice. "Sure." She glanced around, as if checking who might overhear. "Mom and Dad are getting older. We both know it's only a matter of time before medical expenses pile up. I've been thinking we should start a shared account." I stared at her. "You and me," she clarified, leaning in a little. "We both contribute, just for emergencies. That way, if anything happens, we don't need to scramble." My stomach turned. "What kind of account?" I asked, playing along. She waved a manicured hand. "Joint checking, maybe a line of credit later. Something easy. I already talked to Dad. He thinks it's a smart move. I can set it up this week." "And what would it be called?" Her eyes sparkled. "Turner Family Emergency Fund. Sounds official, right?" I smiled back, equally smooth. "Sounds convenient." She touched my arm lightly. "You can have Dahlia look it over if you want. I'm not hiding anything." "Of course not." I nodded. "Sure. Email me the documents." Later that evening, after I excused myself with a vague excuse about an early meeting, I went straight home, turned off all the lights except one lamp, and opened the USB again. The trust folder was more extensive than I remembered. Property titles, tax records, amendments. One document caught my attention. A corporate registration certificate filed 2 years ago under the name ST Legacy Holdings, LLC. It listed one property, the Boston apartment I once called mine, listed under company control. Registered manager, Sable Turner. I took a breath, stood up, and walked to the window. Outside, cars passed by in a rhythm that made no demands. People going home, people minding their business. People not watching every move I made through the lens of hierarchy, and hierarchy disguised as affection. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Dahlia. "Come to my office first thing. Bring the documents." By 8:15 the next morning, I was sitting across from her in a sunlit office in Lincoln Park. Her desk was cluttered with case files, and a half-finished latte sat forgotten to the side. She wore glasses today, her serious ones. I knew better than to interrupt while she read. When she finally looked up, she didn't start with a joke, or a sigh, or even my name. "Sloan," she said slowly, "they've been planning this for months." I didn't ask who "they" was, we both knew, but they were about to see what I sounded like when I stopped playing along. The morning air was crisp when I stepped out of my building, the kind that promises clarity, but offers none. I drove without music, just the hum of tires on pavement keeping rhythm with my thoughts. Vera had agreed to meet me for brunch at a cafe she liked near the lake. The kind of place where everyone orders kale and no one says what they actually mean. She was already there when I arrived, flipping through the menu like she hadn't already memorized it. Her hair was pinned up the same way it had been since I was a kid, tight and unforgiving. "Sloan," she said, looking up. "You look pale. Are you eating?" "I am," I said, pulling out the chair across from her. "Are you?" She chuckled lightly, a sound that used to soothe me as a child, but now only brought up a quiet resentment I wasn't ready to name. The waiter came and went. We ordered, we smiled, we sipped tea. It was all so rehearsed, like a bad dinner theater production, where everyone knew their lines except me. Once we were halfway through the eggs neither of us wanted, I cleared my throat. I need to talk to you about something. Vera raised a brow. Is this about your sister again? This is about everything. I placed a folder on the table, unopened. The trust. The apartment in Boston, the party, the fact that my job title was wrong on the invitations you sent out to 50 people. Her face didn't twitch. She simply picked up her teacup and sipped. Sable just meant well, she said. You know how she is. She takes initiative. You mean she rewrites things she doesn't like? She organizes, Sloane. You've never been one for paperwork. And yet I manage teams, budgets, clients, and somehow managed to buy an apartment before 30. She didn't respond. Instead, she adjusted her scarf like it was the weather that made her uncomfortable. I checked the documents. The apartment is no longer in my name. It's in a corporate entity, one Sable manages. Vera set her cup down. She said it was for tax efficiency. That you agreed. I didn't. Well, that's between you and her. I don't get involved in legal details. But you're involved in choosing her to manage your estate? There was a flicker then. The smallest hesitation. We've discussed it. Your father and I think it makes the most sense. Because she's better at paperwork, right? She's decisive, and she doesn't take things so personally. I laughed. Not loud. Just once. A short, sharp exhale of disbelief. You were nearly poisoned, Mom. You drank from a glass that wasn't meant for you. That wasn't a mix-up. That was a calculated move. And all you can say is that I'm taking things personally? She flinched, barely, but it was enough to keep me going. You're handing over the keys to everything, to someone who's been lying, manipulating, and undermining me for years. Vera straightened in her seat. We're thinking long-term, not emotionally. And Sloane, you've always had a tendency to dramatize. There it was, the gut punch, the casual cruelty cloaked in reasonableness, the line they used to shut me down before I ever got started. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. If you continue to ignore the facts, I said slowly, you're not just choosing sides, you're enabling something dangerous. Her eyes narrowed, but she kept her voice soft. Are you threatening me, Sloane? I leaned in slightly. No. I'm informing you. I'm done being quiet. I'm done waiting to be seen. She didn't respond. The silence between us stretched long and brittle. When the check came, I paid it. She didn't argue. She just gathered her purse and said, I hope you'll think carefully about what you're doing. I have, I replied. Have you? The drive home was a blur. My thoughts weren't racing, they were lining up, clicking into place like dominoes that had been waiting for a push. At a red light, I opened the voice memo app on my phone. There was one file near the bottom I hadn't touched in years. I'd recorded it by accident while visiting the family cabin, one summer when I left my phone on the kitchen table. I pressed play. Sable's voice came through first, low and laughing. Sloane's too soft. She'd never stand up to anyone. Then my father's voice. Calm. Agreeable. That's why we let her think she's in control. She's easier to manage that way. I sat with it in my car, parked outside my building, the audio looping in my head even after it stopped. All these years, I thought I was playing catch-up. Turns out, they'd been dragging me back on purpose, because if she wanted to erase me, she'd have to fight me first. I didn't call Dahlia right away. I didn't need a lawyer for what I had in mind next. I needed proof. Solid, black and white, no room to spin kind of proof. Something that could withstand gaslighting, passive aggression, and every form of "you're imagining it." I knew Sable would try to sling my way. So I did what any woman over 40 with a long memory and a short tolerance for being underestimated would do. I went digging. It was Tuesday morning. I took a personal day from work and drove to the county records office, a brick building that smelled faintly of toner and desperation. The clerk behind the desk handed me a terminal number with the same energy one might give a parking citation. I sat down and typed in the address of the Boston apartment, the one I'd worked overtime for, the one I'd poured a third of my net worth into. The one I thought was still under my name, but there it was, under the current registered owner field. I saw the words, ST Legacy Holdings, LLC. I stared at it for a long time, then I printed it out and slid it into the folder I'd started keeping in my glove compartment. The property had changed hands 4 months earlier. No sale recorded, just a transfer, authorized by a proxy. I pulled up the document. The proxy was my sister. The power of attorney used was one I'd signed 10 years ago during a family trip when I had the flu and thought it was just a placeholder for a week. That document had apparently never expired. By the time I got back to my car, I wasn't trembling. I wasn't even angry in the way I used to be. Those hot, short-lived bursts that ended in tears and no action. No. This time it settled low in my spine, steady and cold. It was the kind of anger that didn't need to shout. It just packed a bag and got to work. I called Sable. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, stranger." "Hey," I said, neutral. "I have a quick question." "Shoot." "Did you transfer the Boston apartment into a corporate holding?" A pause. Just long enough to make it clear she wasn't surprised. "I did," she said. "It was easier that way, for taxes, protection. You know how risky real estate can be." I kept my tone even. "Without telling me?" "You signed the authorization, Sloan. Years ago." "I've been managing things since then. You said you were too busy." "I never agreed to lose ownership." "You didn't lose anything," she said, her voice as smooth as ever. "You're part of the trust." "I didn't authorize a sale. I didn't approve a transfer." She chuckled. "Look, I know you're stressed. It's been a big month. I was just helping, like always." "You're welcome, by the way." I felt my knuckles tighten around the steering wheel. "You don't get to make decisions for me anymore." "Oh, Sloan," she said, and her tone shifted. Cold, detached. "You're not really the decision-maker type." I ended the call without another word. That night, back at the office, I was in the middle of replying to emails when Jennifer, my junior associate, poked her head into my office. "Hey, have you seen this?" She handed me her phone. Open on the screen was a LinkedIn post from Sable's profile. It was a photo of my promotion party, the one where Mom collapsed. The one where I was being honored. But I wasn't in the photo. In my place, Sable stood beside my boss, smiling, her hand extended in what looked like a congratulatory handshake. The caption read, "Proud to celebrate my sister's success in building this company together. A legacy of strong women leading with heart." I stared at the screen. Not even shock. Not anymore. Just numb calculation. She hadn't just removed me from my own property. She'd removed me from my own story. I stood up, walked to the file cabinet, and pulled out the hard copy of my promotion letter. The one signed by the CEO. I scanned it into a PDF, time-stamped it, and opened a new email addressed to HR. Subject line, misinformation affecting company image. I attached the photo, the original invite, the altered LinkedIn post, and a brief, direct message. "I am the sole recipient of the recent vice president promotion. The online posts by Ms. Sable Turner misrepresent the event and my role within the organization. Please advise next steps to correct this miscommunication publicly and internally." I hit send. Then I picked up the phone and called Dahlia. "It's time," I said. "I want to see every document with my name on it. Every signature, every property, every trust, every authorization she's ever touched." Dahlia didn't hesitate. "Come by tomorrow. I'll have a packet ready." I hung up the phone and exhaled. I didn't feel better, not yet, but I felt aligned. And for the first time in years, that was enough. Sable had been rewriting the script for decades, but this time, I was holding the pen. The next morning, as I stirred a spoon through coffee I didn't really want, my phone buzzed with an email from the National Women in Leadership Foundation. I thought maybe it was confirmation, or a congratulations. I had submitted my application last month with every requirement in place: proof of impact, letters of recommendation, documentation of service and growth. I had even gone over it with Dahlia before hitting submit, but that wasn't what the email said. The subject line read, "Disqualification notice, submission compromised." I blinked twice before opening it. The message was short and surgical. Dear Miss Turner, we regret to inform you that your application has been rejected due to a security risk attached to your file. Your submission contained a file flagged for embedded malware. As per our policy, compromised entries are removed from consideration. We appreciate your understanding. I froze. I knew what I had submitted. Every file was clean. I had scanned every document myself, checked them through internal protocols. The only people who had access were me and Dahlia. Within minutes, I was on the phone with her. Dahlia, they flagged my application, I said. They're saying my files contain malware. That's impossible, she said instantly. You scanned them through the firm's secure line. Exactly. Can you run a trace? I don't know how, but someone tampered with it. Give me an hour. While she dug, I tried not to spiral. I opened my laptop, went back to the original submission folder. Everything was intact. Nothing was corrupted. But the version that made it to the foundation clearly wasn't the one I had sent. I didn't need to wonder for long. By midday, Dahlia called me back. Her voice was sharper than usual, clipped like she'd been holding her breath. Whoever tampered with it didn't do a great job covering their tracks, she said. The malware was injected post-submission, right before the foundation pulled your file. How is that possible? Someone intercepted the email, rerouted the attachments. It came from an IP address in Lake Forest. My stomach dropped. Sloan, she added carefully. The IP is registered to Sable Turner's home network. There it was. Again, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I sat down, opened my drawer, and pulled out the notepad where I had been documenting every move Sable made since the promotion party. This is methodical, Dahlia continued. It's not just carelessness or sibling rivalry. She's been targeting your reputation, deliberately, digitally, and publicly. I know, I said. And it's time someone else knows too. An hour later, I was in the office of my executive director, Mr. Daines. He looked up from his desk as I entered, a polite smile on his face, though his eyes already hinted at discomfort. Sloan, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Everything all right? No, I said, but it will be. I placed a folder on his desk, neatly labeled, tabbed, color-coded. Inside, screenshots of the altered LinkedIn post, the original photo from my promotion party, the file submission report from the Leadership Foundation, a copy of the cyber forensic analysis, and the IP trace report, with Sable's name printed in bold. He flipped through the first few pages and then slowed down. I wanted to give you this before rumors start, I said, because there will be whispers, and I want you to have the truth first. He said nothing for a while, then finally, softly, You've been targeted, quietly, systematically. I nodded once. He looked up at me, expression changed. What do you want me to do? Nothing yet, I replied. This isn't about you, but I needed you to know what's happening. That someone tried to erase me. His jaw tightened. Let me know if this escalates. It already has. That night I texted Sable. Coffee, tomorrow, 10 a.m., neutral grounds. She responded in less than 5 seconds. Of course, little sis. Let's clear the air. The next day, we met at a small cafe in Evanston. I chose the booth in the back, under a skylight that made everything feel too honest. She showed up in a beige blazer and a smile, like we were about to discuss redecorating. So glad you reached out, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. You've seemed tense lately. I didn't bother with pleasantries. I placed my phone on the table, tapped the screen, and played the audio clip. A tech expert's voice came through clearly. The IP address that rerouted the submission files is 198.54.223.7, registered to the residential network of Sable Turner. Activity log confirms the file alteration within a 2-hour window of submission timestamp. The cafe's noise didn't drown it out. When the recording ended, I looked at her. She didn't blink. She didn't flinch. She only took a slow sip of her latte, then set the cup down deliberately. Well, she said. You've really been digging. This wasn't curiosity, I said. It was defense. You came at my career, my home, my identity. You've always been so sensitive, Sloane. This wasn't a rivalry, I replied. It was an ambush. And now it's war. Sable leaned back in her seat, a flicker of something colder crossing her expression. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I stood up, dropped $20 on the table, and walked out. This time, I didn't look back. The following week moved like quicksand, slow on the surface, deceptively still, but pulling me deeper with every hour. Dahlia and I filed the paperwork quietly, without drama. No theatrics, just a steady, methodical process, line by line, form by form, legal codes and case numbers and bullet points that detailed a betrayal I had spent years trying to name and years more trying to survive. Civil suit, identity misuse, defamation, breach of trust, property fraud. The charges read like a resume I never applied for. A legacy I never agreed to inherit. A mirror held up to the kind of family history most people can't imagine, and the kind of silence most people never question. For several days after we filed, there was nothing. Sable didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't reach out to me, Dahlia, or even Vera. I imagined her ignoring the first notice, letting it sit on a marble countertop beneath unopened mail and curated catalogs. But then the subpoenas landed, official, direct, impossible to ignore. I pictured her face when she opened the envelope, when she saw her name, printed in bold legal typeface. Plaintiff, Sloane Turner. Defendant, Sable Turner. That night, I sent one message to the family group chat. No preamble, no filter. This will be public. This will be real. No more secrets. Vera didn't reply. Leland typed something. I saw the 3 dots flicker for a moment, then vanish. Sable stayed silent. I didn't expect them to engage. I only wanted them to know. This wasn't going to be another conflict swept under a monogrammed rug. This was happening. And I wasn't asking permission. The court date was set 3 weeks out. Plenty of time for Sable to prepare whatever polished performance she thought might work. Enough time for her to rehearse her victim face, her storylines, her curated anecdotes. Long enough for me, too, to remember every slight, every edited truth, every door she closed behind me while smiling to the crowd. The morning of court, I dressed in navy. Dahlia said it projected confidence without arrogance. I liked the simplicity of it. Clean, unassuming, controlled. My hands didn't shake when I buttoned the cuffs. They didn't shake when I picked up the folder. And they didn't shake when I walked into the courthouse, each step deliberate. Sable was already inside, perfectly styled, pearl earrings glinting under the overhead lights. Her hair curled just enough to look soft, but not fragile. A photo op look, a mask she'd worn for years. She turned as I passed, lips curving in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Little sis," she murmured, "this is beneath you." I didn't respond. I didn't slow down. I just took my seat. The judge entered, and the courtroom stood. Then we sat again, and the case number was read aloud. Just numbers and names, but the air shifted. It was real now, inescapably real. Dahlia opened the case with composure carved from steel. She laid out the facts like blueprints. First came the tech evidence. The malware injection originated from the defendant's residential network, she said. Her voice was even, unwavering. A large screen behind her displayed the digital report, IP address, geotrace, data packets. It was all there, the address clear, indisputable. Sable crossed her legs with exaggerated calm. "Anyone could have spoofed my Wi-Fi," she said, not loudly, but loud enough for the gallery to hear. Next came the financial and property documents. Dahlia walked the court through each form: backdated transfers, proxy signatures, expired authorizations, trust documents altered without my consent. My name missing from where it should have been. My assets reallocated, managed, reassigned. Sable began to shift, first subtly, then more often. A hand to her necklace, a tightening of her jaw. "That's not how trusts work," she interrupted once, with the condescension of someone trying to lecture a professor. The judge didn't even blink. "You'll have your turn, Ms. Turner." Then came the visual evidence, side-by-side comparisons of party invitations, staff bios, public speaking event flyers. On the left, original images. On the right, manipulated versions, my name erased, my face swapped out, sables inserted in my place. One clip showed a slideshow from a promotion party, one I organized, one I paid for, where my image had been removed entirely, her narration praising herself over my work. A hush fell across the courtroom. Dahlia clicked her remote. One last slide appeared. "This is misrepresentation," she said calmly. "Not a misunderstanding, a calculated pattern." I didn't turn my head. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. By the third hour, Sable cracked. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "She's always been jealous. She was never supposed to be the one in the spotlight. Everyone knows I've carried this family." The judge struck the gavel sharply. "One more outburst and you will be removed from this courtroom." Behind us, Vera sat stiff in the back row, lips pressed white. Her knuckles clenched her handbag like it was an oxygen tank. Leland looked down at the floor, silent. Neither of them looked at me, and I didn't need them to. When the verdict came, the judge spoke with crisp finality. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff Sloan Turner. The defendant, Sable Turner, is found liable for misrepresentation, defamation, and breach of trust. The defendant is ordered to return misappropriated property, issue formal public corrections and written apologies across all platforms where false information was spread, and pay damages in the amount of— The number wasn't the part that mattered. It was the word, liable. It rang like a bell inside me. For once, she couldn't charm her way out, couldn't manipulate the story, couldn't lean on silence and loyalty to protect her. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited, microphones angled forward, voices rose like a wave. "Sloan, do you have any comment? What do you want the public to know?" I paused on the courthouse steps. The wind moved my hair gently from my face. I looked up, then squarely at the cameras. "Sometimes," I said, voice clear, steady, "silence protects the wrong people." "I'm done being silent." Flashes erupted. The crowd swelled. But inside, I only heard one sound, the even rhythm of my own heartbeat. Something inside me uncoiled. Not joy, not revenge, just relief. It wasn't the kind of victory you toast with champagne. It was the kind you carry like armor. Quiet, worn, real. Because even after justice, some scars remain. But finally, they belong to the past. But even after victory, some scars don't fade so quickly. It had been 3 weeks since the court ruling, long enough for the press to move on, long enough for family friends to stop texting vague versions of "thinking of you, hope you girls work it out." But not long enough for my body to forget how it felt to walk into a room with all eyes on me, not in admiration, but in disbelief. I hadn't heard from Vera, not a call, not a text. Leland sent a stiff email the day after the ruling that read, "Hope this brings closure. Best wishes moving forward." Closure? That wasn't a word you used when talking to your daughter. On Sunday, I attended a small church ceremony near the north side. Not because I needed religion that morning, but because the stillness of stained glass and soft organ hymns helped me hear myself think. I had just sat down in the back row when I saw her, Vera. She was alone, dressed in the same coat she'd worn to the courthouse, her hands folded too tightly in her lap. We locked eyes for a second. She didn't smile, neither did I. She stayed through the final hymn, then left without saying a word. I didn't follow. There was nothing more to say. That kind of silence was its own decision. That afternoon, I returned home and finally began the thing I'd been avoiding, packing. I was moving to Portland next month. A clean start. New coast, new energy. My role at the nonprofit had been approved. It wasn't high-paying, but it mattered. And after all I'd lost and reclaimed, I wanted my next chapter to be about giving something that couldn't be stolen. As I pulled down a box of old photo frames from the top shelf of my hallway closet, one slipped free and hit the floor, the back popping open. A folded piece of yellowing paper peeked out behind the frame. I frowned, kneeling to pick it up. It was a letter, handwritten. Addressed to me in neat, careful print. Sloan, you are already everything you need to be. Don't wait for the world to notice. Just keep building. Love always, Grandpa. Theo. I read it once, then again, slower the second time. His handwriting hadn't changed since I was little. The loops in his G's, the crooked way he wrote Sloan like it was something precious. I hadn't even remembered he'd written this. The memory came back slowly. I was 15. He'd given it to me after a school awards banquet where Sable had been called up for everything: debate team, science fair, peer leadership. I had won one small essay contest. No one clapped louder than Grandpa. He never treated me like a shadow. He never made me earn love with performance. I sat on the floor for a while, letter pressed to my chest, the past and future both humming through me. 2 days later, I met Dahlia for lunch and handed her a new envelope, my revised estate plan. I want her out, I said simply. Sable? I nodded. Everything. Will, trust, healthcare proxy, financial executor, it's all going to change. Dahlia didn't ask why. She just opened her laptop and got to work. And, I added, I want to start a scholarship. She looked up. In your name? No, I said. In his. I showed her the letter. Theodore James Memorial Scholarship for women in business who grew up believing they were invisible. She blinked hard, but didn't speak for a moment. Then she just nodded. By the end of the week, the paperwork was signed, notarized, and filed. Just like that, the cycle stopped with me. Packing continued, a little easier now. I donated half of what I owned. I shipped the rest. The apartment began to echo, but it was a new kind of echo, freedom, not emptiness. When I stepped off the plane in Oregon a few weeks later, the sky was overcast, the air heavier with mist. But I could breathe. I could breathe in a way I hadn't been able to in years. The nonprofit welcomed me warmly. My first session with the support group was scheduled for that Thursday. I wasn't planning to speak at first, just to observe. But midway through, a woman, mid-50s, sharp eyes, nervous fingers, spoke up. I kept quiet because I thought I was crazy, she said. They told me I was ungrateful, that I didn't understand how family worked. There was a long pause after her words settled into the room, and before I knew it, I opened my mouth. You're not crazy, I said. Silence was just their weapon. Your voice is your armor. She looked at me for a moment, then smiled. Small, but real. I didn't share the rest of my story. I didn't need to. Back at my rental house that night, I stepped out onto the small porch with a glass of water. The garden out front had started to bloom. A neighbor kid had left a hand-drawn picture in my mailbox that read, "You look like a nice lady." I smiled, set the picture inside the screen door, and walked to the rose bush, watering can in hand. They always say family is everything. But as I poured water onto the roots, I whispered softly to no one in particular. Sometimes everything has to burn down before you realize you were never part of it to begin with. And for the first time in my life, peace didn't feel like something I had to earn. Sometimes, the people who hurt us most are the ones who share our last name. But silence isn't strength when it's used to hide injustice. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about reclaiming your voice when no one expects you to speak. Have you ever felt erased in your own family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if stories like this resonate with you, don't forget to subscribe. More powerful family stories are coming your way.